Welcome to Voices Beyond the Spectrum. Real stories, brave voices, radiant perspectives. This is the podcast for parents and caregivers of autistic and neurodivergent children and teens. I'm your host, and each week we hold space for honest conversations, shared struggles, and hard-won victories from those who truly live it. You're not alone, your story matters, and it starts here. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Voices Beyond the Spectrum. I'm your host, Karla Chinen, and today I'm so excited to welcome Ashley Ray, a certified clinical competence speech language pathologist, to Voices Beyond the Spectrum. She's a passionate speech language pathologist who dedicated her career in helping children and families discover new ways to connect, communicate, and thrive. Her journey into the world of communication is deeply personal, and today she'll be sharing her story and lessons she learned and the heart behind her work. So, welcome, Ashley. So, just to let our listeners know a little bit about you, just share a little bit of your journey and what got you to become a speech pathologist and get in this
Yeah.
field.
Well, thank you for having me. I was so honored when you asked me to come on. I was like, yes, of course. If anyone wants to talk AAC and speech, it's me. So, a little bit about me. I attended Biola for undergraduate, and then I got my master's at Biola as well. I had speech as a child for articulation, and I thought it was the coolest thing. I didn't think anything of it when I was going into grad school of like, oh, I want to do that. But it's just been so clear that this is like my passion. So I've been a speech pathologist for 6 years. So I've been able to be at schools, private practices, and I'm currently at an outpatient clinic right now, part-time. Right now, I'm currently wearing lots of hats as I am a clinical supervisor, an adjunct professor, and then I also run my own business, which is called Joyful Sound Speech Therapy, which I never thought in the wildest times that I would be running my own company, but this is why I love what I do. Um, what brings me here today and talking about AAC is that I'm a proud aunt to three nephews. And the oldest nephew is Hudson. He is 7 years old. He is diagnosed with autism and dyspraxia, and he is minimally speaking. He has an AAC device, he gestalt language processor, and he's literally the happiest little boy you could ever meet.
Oh.
So I was doing speech pathology before Hudson was born, and so everyone always asked, like, "Oh, you did it because of him," and it literally happened seamlessly, which is awesome. Um, and then for why I started working in the field, when I started, I had a lot of kids on my caseload who were minimally speaking and minimally verbal. And I didn't know much beyond AAC with what I was taught in grad school, which wasn't that much. And it wasn't until Hudson was at the same age as my clients where I was like really thinking about how this is affecting them and how this is going on and different things like that. Hudson was really struggling with behaviors because he was communicating with his body and it was shown as behaviors. And so what was really hard was people speaking over him of like, oh, this is what's going on or this is what's happening. And deep down that there's so much more to Hudson. And so I've been super close with my sister, and we became even closer when Hudson was born. And so I'm a part of their family, and he's like a son to me. And so we've just walked through all these different challenging things. And it's really opened my eyes to AAC, the autism spectrum, the families, the dynamics, and that's just it kind of was placed on me. It wasn't really something that I was like, oh, I'm going to go pursue. And I think that's what makes me so passionate about it is because if you know me, I'll talk about it till like forever. So that's a little bit about me and how I'm here. And it's kind of just been a process.
And I feel like it's been a blessing not only for you to get also that insight because I've talked to a lot of professionals and sometimes they go into the field because they love the field, but
Mhm.
they like you said you went into it, but I'm assuming, and this is just me assuming, once you had your nephew, it almost went from a profession to a passion.
Yes.
Because now it became personal. Now you're seeing firsthand how it can impact an individual so close because once a parent lets the professional sit outside,
Hmm.
Really get to come into the house and really see what happens behind closed doors, and you got to see that, and get that much closer to your sister and provide that support for her. But I feel like, was that the case for you?
100%. So many times people are like, "Is that in your kid?" I was like, "He's actually not my son," but I spend so much time with him, and I think what was really interesting was like I was the go-to person when he first was diagnosed, and obviously I don't know all the answers. I mean, you learn about things in school, you learn in as a clinician, but then, what do you do when you're talking to your sister about all of this happening, and how can you be a support, and how can you help? And it's just really shown me the gap that there is in really having it be functional communication with however they communicate. Um, going over there late at night, him not sleeping, going in public, like I have, whenever I tell clients or other parents, like I have whatever I'm telling you, I have done with my sister. I have been right there, and it's really just shown that it's not just something like, oh, you just need to like check it off the list. This is like you need to find your passion behind this as a clinician, and I feel like I have found it.
Oh, that's amazing. That's amazing. And what techniques have you been able to transfer over to assist and help your nephew with communication with the knowledge you now, carry and
Yeah.
possess?
Hudson and me have learned together. I remember getting a device at the school I was at, and I was like, huh, maybe I should purchase this app. And I just well, it wasn't just one day, but I spent hours just like putting different things on and looking at it and okay, we're gonna do this. This is gonna work. And then I was like, oh, actually that didn't work. And him realizing what's important to him and figuring out now, I feel like I have a good grasp, but it's been something that it's not just been like, oh, I took this one class or I did something. It was definitely like a learning process. Um, because now I feel like I'm fluent in AAC. Like it's just like part of me. Um, so good or bad, depending on how you see it. But I'm like, I always have my AAC devices on me. It's crazy.
And then switching the topic up a little
Yeah.
bit. When you are, let's say, with a family member, because I've seen this happen very often. I know us as moms, we tend to be the primary caregivers for our kiddos, and we're all about like, yes, AAC device. Yes, let's,
Mhm.
generalize here as well as at home and at school and everywhere else. But sometimes there's a little pushback sometimes from fathers with the
Totally.
AAC device. How often do you see that happening, and how do you kind of are able to like bring both parents in and explain the value behind a child utilizing AAC device for communication?
That's a great question. I think what's really helpful, and you kind of pinpointed that, is that it's a full family affair. Like, sure, Hudson has his AAC device, but it has affected my parents, it's affected my siblings, it's affected their kids. Like, it's a full thing. And so when I work with clients now, I feel like I have such a better understanding, or at least an idea of that no one's going to be on the same page. So, if mom's really fighting for it or she's wanting it, or maybe it's dad fighting for it. And then, the other parent, it just kind of depends for family. But for me, kind of just figuring out the why instead of being like, hey, this is an AAC. I can give you all the research in the world. I can explain to you, I can show it to you. Your kid could be using it. But if we haven't had that conversation of where are you feeling your child should be at? What is your expectations? If we don't have the why addressed, we're not able to really cover and work on the AAC together. So like if you don't agree or you have hesitations, bring those hesitations to the table. Let's sit with that so we can actually talk about those things. And then obviously I have my background, my history, my license, but kind of explaining to parents that it's not just verbal or nothing. We use a lot of communication. And I feel like every time I have conversations, I make handouts because I want parents to understand. But we use gestures, we're pointing, we're using objects, like we do all these different things. And a communication device just gives you more of a foundational vocabulary, and you can have so much with that. And so I kind of explain to parents, like, your child is communicating to you in wondrous ways consistently. And so let's just add that support. And if the verbal comes or you have those hesitations, then we can talk through those things. But um I feel like sometimes it becomes like this like big fight. And
Mhm.
honestly, if we just kind of address like, how are you feeling with this? Okay, you know what, you don't agree? That's totally fine. Let's just walk through this new path. Because a lot of times, for at least me, like I never thought Hudson was going to be using an AAC, and now I can't imagine him without it. But it's not something that just comes like, oh, light switch. It's a
Mhm.
process.
And I think maybe it might also be because I've heard this from other parents. Sometimes the accepting of the AAC device is also accepting the fact that their child might not verbally speak. But,
Mhm.
I think with you and your knowledge and what you bring to parents, you're able to kind of break down those misconceptions of communication comes in so many forms, you know? What kind of what kind of things do you utilize with parents to kind of bring down those misconceptions and with public in general in regards to how communication can be in so many forms?
I think what's really interesting is the expectation that we all place on ourselves in society. That if you're not verbally speaking and you're not eloquent with how you talk, you're less than. And I think what's really interesting is that's not the case. We've watched cartoons, we've done things, and they don't talk at all, and we love those things growing up. They did plenty with those gestures and things like that. But for kids, or even adults who use other things, I think it's it's more of an understanding of like that connection. The connection is what's the huge part. The eye gaze, the gesturing, the comment, the responses that they have when you communicate with them. Like Hudson does so much without verbal and or his AAC device, and I feel like if I didn't count his sounds and the different things he does, like that's not even taking account into who he is, and that is how he was made. And so I feel like we have to accept the whole person. And so I always tell parents, like, would you rather write out everything that you have to do, or would you rather type it out? And normally for us, we want to type it out, I'd rather text it, or I'd rather call somebody. Whatever's your easiest mode of communication, we all have it. It's all different. And so why not honor that for other people? Because why is it a bad thing if you got an email instead of I called you? Like, but it
Yeah.
kind of become like the normal. And so it's more just kind of talking about it in a different light.
Definitely. And um, as far as school districts, without saying a school district,
Yeah.
if you have worked with them, how has that collaboration worked between you and, let's say, a school district to make sure that the skills are excuse me, are generalized and like the devices, they're under the same program and the parent is trained,
Yeah.
because a lot of the times I think they give our kiddos a device, but then they're like, go out into the world. And you're like, how do I use this? It's so many buttons, so many demands.
I feel like when I always tell parents is AAC or any sort of any communication that's, beyond words is all uphill. So I think what's helpful to acknowledge is not one case is specific. So I've had some clinicians at schools who are on it. We're able to collaborate. We're able to do different things. They've had the parent training. I feel like every story has like different things missing. So whether they have the device, we're able to edit the device, parents are involved, school's not using it, to my knowledge. Like there's always something going on. I think so it's helpful for me. I always tell parents, I want to educate you and to give you as much information as possible so you can advocate and you can ask for different things. And then they can also advocate for their clinicians at school because a lot of these clinicians are given different communication devices and you have no training or, as much training as you would want. And then you have a training with a parent for 30 minutes and that's not sufficient to give for
Mm.
them forever. So I feel like there's just a lot of cracks in the system of like what works and what doesn't. And so having the understanding and kind of looking at the whole picture, I always want to tell parents, I want to give you the ideal. So then that way you can see, hey, this is working, this isn't. And what you can do as a parent and advocate,
Mhm.
they can do a lot. And if not, then that's where my hope is that I can step in and here, let me provide that parent training. Let me go to that school and provide the training for them because it's not like someone's fault. It's more just trying to figure out where is the crack and how can we help bridge that gap.
Bridge gap. That's beautifully said. I mean, collaborating is everything. And I think once sometimes you have certain parties that might not collaborate as clearly or
Mhm.
there's not that clear communication there where
Hmm.
things can get lost or,
Totally.
and I think it is a lot of the times us as parents, our responsibility to educate ourselves as much as we can to know
Totally.
what is available for our kids, to know how to utilize an item to be better for them. Because yes, we do want to be the person that advocates for them, but as they get older, you want them to have their own voice, their
100%.
own way of communicating their needs because eventually we're not going to be in the picture. And what happens then?
No,
You know?
totally. And I think what's so interesting too is like I always tell parents like I don't benefit one way or another. Like I'm not like, "Oh my gosh, they did this, like that's a helpful for me." But I think being in those shoes and not knowing, like I wish someone could have told us, "Hey, this is what you can do," or "Here, this is what you can do while you're waiting." Like there's so many different things that I always tell parents like we can give them so much communication even if the device isn't there, or how can we set up for an assessment? How can we make sure that the child knows how to edit his device? Can you edit it? Once you change schools or class, like that teacher's gone. Like I want to empower you so that you know how to use it.
Yeah, definitely. And going back to your sister, because
Hmm.
you were already in the field, and when
Hmm.
you did find out about that diagnosis,
Hmm.
how did it impact you and your family?
Yeah, that's a
And
great question. It was a process. It was definitely different for everybody. So I'm one of four kids. So it's my sister and then me, and then I have two younger siblings. And it was a process for everybody. Everyone kind of had thoughts, different things, feelings at different times. And so for me, my focus was Hudson, and how can I best help Hudson? And then how can I help be there for my sister because it was a process of figuring out like up until he was diagnosed he had no, there was like nothing that was like checking wrong for assessments, and so my sister's like what is it now compared to earlier, and what was said from doctors. That was a big one. The doctors told us that by the age of 5, if Hudson had behavioral therapy for 40 hours a week, he would no longer be autistic. Yes. And so
wow.
we now can think about it in a lighter thought process. And we know without a doubt Hudson is made exactly the way he is. Like he has been Hudson from the day he was born. We can see it and we love it. But to have that as a parent and to be told that and
Hmm.
not have, not even a me in this situation, but just having someone to like talk through these things with, um, and that's a big thing to say. It's a big expectation. And Hudson is very much still himself, and he is still autistic, and he will always be autistic. And he will always have his struggles. But to have the thought process of it like being fixed or it's going to be done was a really big thing to like work through. And I feel like it almost we made it be something that we're going to embrace, and we love that about Hudson. But it's definitely something that you have to work through of like he looks different or different things come up, and he's not the same as other typical kids. He's 7 where he's at. And I feel like till he was 5, not because of what the doctor said, but just until he got his communication, it was really challenging to kind of work through that process. And how do you find other people? This was
Yeah.
before social media was as big as as it was. But yeah, I hope that answered
Yeah,
your
yeah,
question.
yeah, definitely. And that's what I was speaking about being a professional that
Mhm.
is in the world with, family members that have been through it, that are going through it, that you see the struggles in and out, and a professional that unfortunately just read a book
Mhm.
and studied really hard and
Yeah.
got certified or a degree. So I think that's where like the line of empathy and realizing how much power as a professional
Yes.
your words mean to those individuals, those parents, especially when you're barely providing a diagnosis to those parents. I mean,
100%.
you can really alter the pathway that that parent takes that child in. And yes, was the fact that he said get them therapy, that was on point. But as
Totally.
for
Not
early
everything.
intervention, but not everything,
Yeah.
you can't put false hopes on an individual.
Yeah.
And on top of that, wrong information overall,
Mhm.
regardless. Like you can't say a child is going to get fixed regardless of the diagnosis without truly having data and,
Yeah.
fact. So, I mean, I guess to a large degree, I mean, you were a great blessing to your family and to your sister in guiding her through that process and providing because it does become a very isolating world, I guess, with the
Mhm.
diagnosis, because your friends that you used to hang out with, you don't no longer hang out with them because their kids are in a different stage than your kid
Mhm.
is. And that comparison's going to be made regardless. And a lot of parents take a little bit longer to mourn
Totally.
the child that they thought that they were going to have, you know? And I think that's a big thing that you helped your sister through that to not feel that isolation.
I
Um,
feel like for Hudson, he had so many needs all at once. Like his communication wasn't there, his awareness was there. And so we really had to hit everything head on, where some parents have more of a longer process of like, oh, we can acknowledge some things and not the other. I feel like with Hudson, he ripped off every band-aid that we could. But it's been such a blessing. Like you said, the just because some doctors have certain things. Like it's great. We want to take all the information and then you as the parent make that judgment call.
Exactly. And now that you're, working with more families, tell me a little like without obviously names, like some amazing progress you've seen in with some of the kiddos that went in there where the parents a little hesitant to add an AAC device because, they're still in denial that their child might not be speaking,
Yeah.
and getting them on board, getting them through the process of it, and now seeing the results of that work, that hard work from the family and from you and from the child.
Yeah. There's so many stories, first of all, but my first thought is just making it as normal as possible. So for me, I am Miss Ashley who always has her AAC devices out. So it's not something that I use with only certain clients or not. So for me, normally, depending on the client, but there was one specific who was an AAC user, but he didn't want to use it. And he just had a hard time. And so kind of figuring out how can I help mom in this, she's like, he knows he can use it. And so just working through those emotions and then breaking through, like we found out that he can read, he's bilingual, he interchanges the programs and is able to do these different things. And I think just seeing the clients for their abilities and how much they can communicate. Whether you show it to me or not, I assume everything I tell you, you understand. And they generally always understand. And so I think talking to them like normal, like I would talk to any of my nephews. Okay, we're going to do this. We're going to show them this. And putting the language with the device really kind of just opens up the parents of like, it's not something of like, something special. It's fluid. So we're going to do this. What color do you want? And so it's not something that's like a big event. It's just, oh, this is how Miss Ashley kind of communicates. I do both at the same time. And so I feel like making it less of a big thing makes it for parents who are like, oh my gosh, they know how to do that. They selected those. He can't say his animals, but he can identify all of his animals, or he knows the alphabet, but he has no way of showing us. And so kind of finding ways to get those success in sessions is where I love finding like what do they like to do, and then I'll try to find it on my device and get that positive so that the parents can see, because a lot of times these kids are in therapies and they're not able to see the amount of success that they're wanting, especially with communication if they are non-speaking or they have difficulty with that.
That's amazing. And I love the fact that you touch base on ableism, you know,
Mhm.
and how a lot of, you know, individuals in the disability community feel like people are condescending to them,
Mhm.
and they assume that they don't understand just because they can't communicate verbally. But
Mhm.
they're I've met some bright individuals that can communicate with an AC device and you're like, "Oh my God, you're amazing." You know? So, I mean, I love that about you and I think a child like I can speak from personal experience with my kids. Like they can literally sense a person's intentions
Mhm.
and energy because I think a lot of the times they are quiet. So they are fully aware of their surroundings. They hear everything,
Mhm.
they acknowledge and see every person's nonverbal cues. So they know how to pick up on little things very quickly and you were able to pinpoint that, and to connect, to not as a professional assume the child's gonna be open to talk to you or to engage with you just because you're there, getting to know them, finding what they like, what they don't like, and also getting the parents on board and saying, "Hey, look, this is the true potential of your child."
Yeah.
It is.
That's like if I could have a job title, it's just showing parents their kids' potentials. Because sometimes I'll be seeing a client, and once I realize, I'm like, oh, you can totally use this. You've never had it. I'm going to hold you to it. These kids have never had to be held to these expectations, and not bad of the parents, but we're communicating at a way higher level than they ever have. And so I just always am like, I want to show these parents, like, your child is so bright. If that's my job, is to show how smart they are, then my I'm having a success because these kids can, if they can use YouTube Kids, I tell them they're fine. They know how they can do it. They just need to understand the process.
Definitely, definitely. And what I know we're gonna have a cool training with you, in the upcoming months, but what are some strategies and tools that are easy that you could just, let parents know that how they might be able to start the journey?
Yeah, I think one, figuring out kind of like their daily routine. I always tell parents, like, how is your day looking? When they get up, they get dressed, they're asking for food. What are they doing? And kind of acknowledging, okay, he brings me the apple. Okay, that's a great, an idea of where we can provide those specific communication. So right now they're communicating, that's awesome, but how can we take it a next step and get that vocabulary? Can we print out a core board? Can we have, a menu on the fridge,
Hmm.
different things like that. It doesn't have to be something of like, you're going to sit down, we're going to be at the table, and we're going to do pop the pig. Like, it's not that. For me, I'm like, what are you doing as a household? How do you communicate when he wants to put his shoes on, those little things. And so telling parents to honor all of the options that they communicate with. So, whatever they're doing, but then how can we make it a step farther? How can we give him that communication? Is it having a communication device? Is it using a switch to press something? Everybody's abilities are different. Is it using an eye gaze? That's something that I also do. But these kids are communicating, and we just have to figure out the puzzle. And so the parents are normally the most knowledgeable in figuring out what works for them and what parents know, okay, how can we have that translate into something else? So if the child is being babysat by somebody else and you're not there and they want the one episode of, Super Kitties and you don't know it, how can we have them communicate that to somebody else? And so that's kind of my job, is putting communication through everywhere. And so that's kind of what I would tell parents, is just figuring out what they're doing and start from there.
Okay. And now, like, can we get a little bit more insight on your company and what is
Yeah.
it that you do? Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I was at a school, so I was at a private practice, and I just realized that this population was on my heart. And I was like, I just love, first of all, I love talking about it. I love doing this. I love having all AAC. And so I just realized that there's like no support for families to go out in public, to go places. To really just problem solve with AAC devices. Like, I want to be the person who can help you walk alongside and get AAC devices, figure out how to advocate for schools, whatever your challenge is, I want to be there for them. And so I started the business, and it has just been the biggest blessing. And I could not find a more specific job that is like perfect for me. And so I get to go places with families, and we're at Target with the AAC device, and I'm there to empower the families. Okay, you know what? Where are you the most afraid? Gone to doctor's appointments. We've gone to get haircuts, all these different things. These things are something we take for granted, but these families have a hard time with. And I'm not afraid. I have been on the ground out, in Hobby Lobby, working on that communication. Okay, I see you're upset. We're going to work through this. And so for me, it's just given me such a freedom to show how much communication really is so functional and such a wide range that um, I always say like I'm the crazy person who doesn't stop talking about AAC. And so it's kind of fun that I get to do that for a living. Um, and just kind of spread awareness. I want people to have it not be such a scary thing. I want it to be used in different settings. And that's my hope. My hope is that we can have it in other places.
Oh, that's amazing. That's amazing. And that's why I brought you here. I wanted for families to know that sometimes between the communities, we do talk about like professionals, and
Hmm.
when you do get that one end of professional, like the one that gave your sister the diagnosis in that matter.
Yeah.
But then I do want to share the other side, the ones that are really in it and love it and care for it and are really there for our families. Yesterday we had our support group, and I'm not going to share obviously personal stuff that occurred there, but one of the questions was what individual outside the immediate family impacted, our children. And a lot of the times it's you guys, the professionals, the teachers, the staff members that really make a difference.
Hmm.
I mentioned for my son, he goes to a non-public school, and his teacher, he was into the phases of the moon. So for his birthday 2 years ago, she printed out the phases of the moon t-shirts for every aide in the classroom, and he was the new moon. So he could have all the phases of the moon for his birthday.
That is so sweet. Like
Yeah.
that's so specific to what your son loves. And
Mhm.
I feel like I don't know about the new moon, but I'm totally in support of those things. Like it's crazy what,
Yeah.
you know, she took the time to get to know your son and she knew what's impactful. And I think something for Hudson is, I could get Hudson something as a gift, but it doesn't matter unless it's something meaningful for him. And those are the times where it's like, I
Mhm.
didn't know I needed to add all 80 cat breeds to his device. He loves cat breeds, like what? I don't know cats, but now I'm getting passionate and finding that creativity of you know, getting her all those shirts with the moon, like I
Yeah.
feel like if you know that about them, it's even more special. And so
Yeah.
like what I really hope is that we can find out those things for clients because like they love their special interests. What are
Mhm.
those special interests? And sometimes I don't even know what half the clients like. And so I'm like, okay, if I have all these options, you tell me what you like
Yeah.
from
And that's
there.
another thing I always tell my parents because I do help them sometimes advocate and, guide them a little bit. I'm like, always, always make a sheet before they start their school of their preferred, their non-preferred
Yes.
activities, things, if your
Mm.
kid's into Toy Story, put Toy Story
Yes.
in there. If your kid is into moons, put that in there. You know,
Yeah.
it's very important because you are that liaisons between the school and
Mhm.
your child, or the
It's a
therapist.
lot of responsibility.
Yes. So I think it just provides it's easier process for your child because then people will be like, "Oh, he likes this. Let me get more stuff of this. I know
Mhm.
he'll be able to enjoy this." Or he likes Legos. Let me go buy a set of Legos to kind of motivate him to do work with me. Things like that. So that is, I think, very important in any line of work with professionals, but specifically, I think with kiddos that are neurodivergent because they communicate in such a particular way, specific way.
Yeah, and their brain just thinks of things so differently. And
Mhm.
I feel like for Hudson, it's really shown me that like whenever I'm like, okay, I'm kind of being crazy, I'm adding, the cat breeds. I added one time the whole Starbucks menu, the entire Starbucks menu. And he loves it. He will literally go and identify it. And so every time I add these things where I'm like, I don't know, he always has the awareness, he always uses it. And then the next time I put it on mine, that next client is using it and they're communicating. So I'm like, every time I'm adding something, I'm seeing more people relate to it. Oh, I love this thing on YouTube Kids. Oh, I love, this certain song from Super Simple. It's just been cool because I'm getting to see a bigger world through his eyes and then all the specifics that each kid likes.
Mhm.
Like I never would have guessed this certain song,
Mhm.
but it's
I-
cool.
If you could say what one thing, or maybe I'll give you two, what two things has your nephew taught you about yourself and about life?
Oh my gosh. You did not have that on the questions. That's a good one. That's a good one. Um, I would just say to presume competence. Like Hudson, we learned so much that like he taught himself how to read and we had no idea. And there's just certain things where it's like if I assumed and put limitations on Hudson, I don't know, I don't even know what my expectations would be of him for him. And so if anything, it's like just really presuming competence and just allowing to kind of go down those paths where you're like, I don't really know. He's can read and we had no idea for how long, we don't know. And so it's just really opened our eyes of like Hudson can do so much. It's just we have to make sure we're providing that space. And so for me, I always want a safe space for the clients to process their emotions and then to also grow and to dive deeper in things that might not be, make sense or what we're talking about, or that's not what we're doing in session. And if that's what you want to talk about, it's shown me like, why not? Let's go for it. And let's talk about cat breeds. But yeah, I would
Mhm.
just say that presuming competence and that I would say it's a journey that if anything, it's not something, just because I have SLP after my name, I do not feel like I am like the professional. Being humbled is something that I feel daily of like, I don't know what we're doing. And so kind of just accepting, like, I don't know what we're doing. I have all these things in my tool belt. Let's try these things. And if not, we're going to keep going. Because the second I feel like I know what I'm doing, is
Mhm.
very short. And so now I just accept it. Like I am not a specialist. I am not I mean, I'm professional, but I'm not like an AAC, this big thing. It's just I'm a person has spent thousands of hours on AAC.
Mhm.
Um, and that's it. Like I'm a normal person.
And then for the final takeaway,
Yes.
what would be one key advice or something you could tell your parents that would help them through the start of this or the journey, just based on personal experience with your sister and just based on your own personal experience as a professional working with kids?
I would say you know your you know your child the best. And if you aren't able to find the support you need from therapists or teachers or doctors or whatever setting their child is in, to keep looking and to find that support because there are people out here that will support and go through these different things and talk to different. This group is a great a great resource. Like get community and get connected because it's very isolating. There's no way that this person does this. And even talking with parents, I can say, oh, do they hurt themselves? Do they bite? Do they do these things? And to have the clinician acknowledge it before the parent, then they feel more free to be like, yeah, you know what? They do these things, or they hurt themselves, or I don't know what it is. And so just providing that there are neuro-affirming people who are going to encourage and be there for you and sit in the space of like not feeling like, oh, your child's hitting its head on the ground. Like that's crazy. No, let's figure out what's going on. And not everyone's going to be that way, but to really advocate and figure out where they can find that, whether it's your pediatrician. Hudson has an amazing pediatrician. Little things like that. Find somebody keep going until you find somebody. So that's what I would say is just advocate and to have that community, use you as a resource. You have all these different things, which is
Thank you.
great.
Thank
Um,
you. Thank
and
you.
to have this podcast as a vessel, like I I wish Brittany and myself had these things, back in the day because it would have been so helpful. Like I would have listened to every podcast. I'd be like, let's go. So
Thank
yeah.
you very much. Well, with that being said, I want to thank you for joining us. I really, really appreciate your insight, not only as a professional, but as a person that, went on this journey as a family member, with your sister, and the fact that you advocate with so much passion for our kids. It truly means the world for a lot of us parents. So thank you again, and I look forward to having the training, where you can provide more information in regards to, you know, s speech therapies and different AAC devices and programs that can be beneficial for our children. So thank you again. Thank you everyone for listening, and stay tuned for next week's podcast. And I look forward to seeing all of you guys again next week. Have a great one. Bye bye. Thank you for joining us on Voices Beyond the Spectrum, where real stories and radiant perspectives come to life. A special thank you to our guest, Ashley Ray, a certified speech language pathologist, for sharing her expertise and passion for empowering neurodivergent children through communication. Don't forget to follow, subscribe, and share this podcast to keep these important conversations going. You can listen to Voices Beyond the Spectrum on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and Podbean, and follow Empathy for Autism California on social media for upcoming episodes, trainings, and events. Remember, every voice matters, every story is powerful, and together we're building the world beyond the spectrum. Voices Beyond the Spectrum is a production of Empathy for Autism California, Inc., original music by Brad Kalu, piano by Karla Chinen, and hosted by Karla Chinen. Till next time.